On March 4th, 2025, a woman walked into my shop holding a printout from a used car listing, pointing at the engine code like it was a lottery number. "It's a Toyota," she said. "It's supposed to be bulletproof, right?" I looked at the code. 2AR-FE. I told her to sit down, because that sentence, "It's a Toyota, it's supposed to be bulletproof," has cost more people more money than almost any phrase in the used car market. Today, I am telling you the truth. Nobody wants to say out loud. Not every Toyota engine deserves the reputation the badge carries. Some of them are genuinely some of the most over-engineered, indestructible machines ever bolted into a production vehicle. And some of them are quietly infamous inside the industry for problems that Toyota itself had to admit to in writing. By the end of this video, you will know exactly which 3 engines to walk away from and exactly which 4 engines you should be hunting for, even if it means buying a car that is decades old. Here is the uncomfortable truth about the Toyota just runs forever myth. It is not a myth because it is false. It is a myth because it is incomplete. Toyota built genuine legends, engines that have crossed 1 million miles on factory internals. But Toyota also built engines during specific years, under specific cost pressures, with specific design shortcuts that turned into some of the most well-documented failure patterns in the company's history. The badge on the trunk does not tell you which engine you are getting. The code stamped on the block does, and almost nobody checks that code before they hand over their money. I have spent years watching these exact engines come through the bay. I have seen the oil consumption logs. I have read the technical service bulletins Toyota quietly issued to extend warranties on problems they never wanted to publicly admit existed. I have also rebuilt engines with 6-figure mileage that looked like they had 10,000 miles on them inside. This video is not opinion. Every engine on this list is backed by documented failure patterns, factory bulletins, or decades of verified high-mileage survivors. So let's start with the ones you need to avoid, because the sooner you can spot these codes, the sooner you stop losing money to a reputation that was never earned in the first place. The first engine on the worst list is the 2AZFE, the 2.4-liter 4-cylinder Toyota put in millions of Camrys, RAV4s, Scion TC models, and Highlanders through most of the 2000s. On paper, this engine looks completely unremarkable, which is exactly the problem. It looked so normal that almost nobody flagged it as a risk until owners started noticing something strange. Their oil level kept dropping, and nobody could explain why. The root cause traces back to the piston ring design. The oil control rings on the 2AZFE were prone to carbon buildup inside their grooves, and once that buildup set in, the rings lost their ability to scrape oil cleanly off the cylinder walls. Oil started slipping past into the combustion chamber and burning off, invisibly, a little at a time. Owners would check the dipstick and find it low again after just a few hundred miles, with no leak underneath the car, no smoke anyone noticed, no warning light. On top of the ring issue, the 2AZFE also developed a reputation for stripped cylinder head bolt threads, a problem that turns a routine head gasket job into a much more expensive repair because the threads themselves have to be repaired or the head has to be replaced. Add cooling system failures into the mix and you have an engine that looks like a normal, forgettable Camry motor right up until it starts eating a quart of oil every 1,000 miles. The frustrating part is how long this can go unnoticed. Most drivers do not check their oil between changes anymore. They trust the dashboard, and the dashboard does not always catch a slow burn early enough. By the time the oil light finally comes on, the engine has often already been running dangerously low for weeks, and that is exactly when secondary damage, worn bearings, scored cylinder walls start stacking on top of the original problem. The second engine, and honestly the one I see the most heartbreak over, is the 2ARFE. This is the 2.5-liter four-cylinder that replaced the two AZFE around 2009 and 2010 in the Camry, RAV4, and Highlander. Owners nicknamed it the oil burner, and that name is not an exaggeration. This is the engine that generated enough complaints that Toyota issued Technical Service Bulletin 0194-14, extending warranty coverage specifically because of excessive oil consumption. The cause is almost identical in spirit to the two AZ, thin, low-tension oil control rings that were designed to reduce friction and improve fuel economy, but that wore prematurely and let oil seep past into the cylinders. Some owners reported needing to add a quart of oil every 1,000 miles, which on a car that only gets an oil change every 5,000 miles means the engine could burn through 4 or 5 quarts between services. Imagine buying what you believe is a reliable Camry, only to find yourself buying oil almost as often as you buy gas. That is the reality this engine created for a huge number of unsuspecting owners, and it is a huge reason why you should never buy a 2010 to 2017 four-cylinder Camry or RAV4 without personally checking the oil level and asking for maintenance records first. The third engine on the worst list is not old news. It is happening right now, in 2026, to people buying brand new trucks. It is the V35AFTS, the 3.4-liter twin-turbocharged V6 Toyota introduced in the current generation Tundra, along with the Lexus LX and GX. This engine represents Toyota's move into modern turbocharged power, and mechanically it is an ambitious, technically impressive design. But it has been the subject of a recall covering nearly 270,000 vehicles across 2022 through 2024 Tundras, LX Sport utility vehicles, and GX Sport utility vehicles. The issue traces back to metallic debris, sometimes called swarf, left inside the engine during manufacturing. That debris can migrate to the number one crankshaft main bearing, and under sustained load, it leads to catastrophic bearing failure and sudden, total loss of power while driving. Some independent investigations have gone further, suggesting there may be a deeper structural issue with how the engine's architecture handles oil film pressure at that same bearing, which would mean the debris problem is only part of the story. Toyota's current fix for many affected trucks is not an automatic engine replacement. It is a dealer inspection using new diagnostic software to determine whether a given engine is actually defective before Toyota commits to replacing it. And that has understandably frustrated a lot of owners who bought a brand new, 6-figure Land Cruiser-based sport utility vehicle expecting Toyota's legendary reliability, not a bearing failure recall. If you are shopping for a new or lightly used Tundra, LX, or GX built on this engine, you need to check the recall status by VIN before you sign anything, because this is not a rumor. It is an open, active recall as of this year. What makes this one sting more than the others is the price tag attached to it. These are not budget commuter cars. A Tundra with this engine can easily run into the $60,000 or $70,000 range, and an LX or GX built on the same platform pushes well past 6 figures. People are paying flagship prices for what is supposed to be Toyota's most advanced engine, only to find themselves waiting on a dealer to run inspection software and tell them whether the truck they already own is safe to keep driving. Now let's talk about the engines that earned every bit of the reputation Toyota is famous for, starting with one that belongs in a museum of engineering excess in the best possible way, the one UZFE. This is the 4.0-liter V8 Toyota built for the original 1989 Lexus LS 400, and the story behind it explains everything about why it turned out the way it did. Toyota spent roughly 6 years and, by some accounts, close to $1 billion developing this engine, using 1,400 engineers and 2,300 technicians, and building 900 prototypes before they were satisfied. The goal was not just to match Mercedes and BMW, it was to beat them on smoothness, weight, and long-term durability in a market where German luxury sedans had never been seriously challenged before. The 1UZFE used a 6-bolt main bearing design normally reserved for heavy-duty or race applications, which is a huge part of why this engine became famous for surviving conditions that would destroy a normal luxury car engine. Journalist Matt Farah famously bought a high-mileage Lexus LS 400 and drove it past the 1 million mile mark on the original, unopened engine internals. 1 million miles on the factory bottom end, in a luxury sedan that most people assumed would be scrapped by 200,000. That is not a fluke. That is what happens when a manufacturer builds an engine with almost no regard for cost, purely to prove a point. The second engine on the best list is one that changed car culture entirely. The 2JZ, in both naturally aspirated GE and turbocharged GTE form. The 3.0-liter inline-six found in the Toyota Supra. What makes the 2JZ legendary is not just that it survives daily driving for decades, although it absolutely does. It is that the factory internals, the stock cast iron block, the stock crankshaft, the stock connecting rods, can reliably hold power levels that are 2, 3, sometimes 4 times higher than what the engine produced from the factory. Tuners have pushed 2 JZ GTE engines to 800, 900, even over 1,000 horsepower on the original bottom end, with nothing more than turbo, fuel, and tuning upgrades. That kind of headroom does not happen by accident. It happens because Toyota overbuilt the block and rotating assembly far beyond what stock power levels ever demanded. For a road-going production engine, that level of built-in strength is almost unheard of, and it is a huge reason why clean 2JZ-powered Supras have become some of the most sought-after and expensive used Toyotas in the world today. The third engine is one that will not show up on any collector's list, but has quietly earned near-mythical status among truck and off-road owners. The 22R and 22RE four-cylinder, used in Toyota pickups and 4Runners through the 1980s and into the early 1990s. If you have spent any time in truck forums, you have seen some version of the joke that a 22RE will outlive the rest of the truck, the driver, and possibly civilization itself. Like most jokes, it exists because of a real pattern. These engines were built with genuinely simple, over-strengthened internals, forged connecting rods, a design tolerance that shrugged off abuse, neglect, and hard off-road use that would have killed a less robust engine years earlier. You can still find 22RE-powered Toyota trucks running daily with 300,000 or even 400,000 miles on the clock, often on original internals, sometimes with nothing more than routine maintenance and a timing belt swap every so often. In a used market flooded with engines that need to be babied to survive, the 22RE stands out because it was engineered to survive people who did not baby it at all. The fourth and final engine on the best list is the one you are most likely to actually find sitting in a driveway near you right now, the 2GRFE, the 3.5-liter V6 Toyota put into the Camry, Highlander, Sienna, Avalon, RAV4, and multiple Lexus models for 18 years starting in 2005. This is not a rare, exotic collector's engine. It is a mainstream, mass-produced V6 that quietly became one of the most trusted engines Toyota has ever built. It is chain-driven, meaning there is no timing belt to replace on a schedule, which removes one of the most common maintenance-related failure points in the industry. It has a genuinely well-designed cooling system, and it is supported by an enormous parts network because Toyota built millions of them. Well-maintained examples routinely clear 200,000 miles without drama, and fleet use examples, the minivans and Highlanders that get driven hard every single day, regularly push past 250,000 and even 300,000 miles. Some documented examples have crossed 400,000 miles on their original engines. Independent surveys of owners have found that roughly 80% report satisfaction with the engine, and more than 70% say their only expenses have been routine maintenance, not repairs. That is not luck. That is what a low-drama, well-engineered V6 looks like after nearly 2 decades in the real world, driven by real families, not babied by collectors. So here is where that leaves you. If you are shopping for a used Toyota and you see a 2AZFE or a 2ARFE under the hood, that does not automatically mean walk away, but it does mean you check the oil level yourself before you even start the test drive, and you ask directly whether the owner has ever had to top off oil between changes. If you are looking at a new or recent Tundra, LX, or GX, you check the VIN against the active recall before you sign a single document, because this is not a historical footnote. It is happening in real time. And if you find a 2GRFE, a 2JZ, a 22RE, or especially a clean one UZFE, you are looking at an engine that has already proven, through decades of real ownership, that it can outlast almost anything else on the road. The badge on the trunk was never the guarantee. The code stamped on the block always was. Now you know which codes to trust and which ones to walk away from. If this saved you from making a mistake on your next used car search, hit like so more buyers see it before they get burned. Subscribe if you want more breakdowns like this, engine by engine, model by model, so you always know exactly what you are buying before you hand over your money. And if you have owned one of these engines yourself, good or bad, drop it in the comments, because the next person reading this might be deciding right now whether to buy the car sitting in front of them.